Okay, so we're going to start. So, hi everybody. My name is Chelsey Gaskew, and I just want to thank you all for coming tonight. I really appreciate it. Tonight we're going to talk about mental health in the education system as it pertains to the African American community. Okay. So let's talk about me. I'm your lovely host. My name is Chelsey Gaskew. I am from Baltimore, Maryland. I'm a first year psychology major at the number one HBCU, Spelman College. I'm 18 years old. I am a proud City College alumna. And fun fact about me, I have three businesses. Chelsea's Jewelry Box, which is my jewelry business. Sister to Sister, that's my mentoring program for high school young ladies, and Chelsea's G College Consulting, in which I help juniors and seniors with their college process. So let's talk about the Healing Youth Alliance. So Gemma's gave you a little background, but I'm gonna just expand on a little more. So the Healing Youth Alliance is an organization under the University of Maryland School of Social Work that focuses on youth trauma, specifically Baltimore City's youth. It allows youth like me to express their feelings about mental health and trauma within the African American community. Being a part of this amazing organization and promise has allowed me to approach and handle my trauma and my mental health. After graduating from Spelman, I do want to be a children's psychiatrist. So learning about familiar children's mental health disorders and their trauma while I am still a freshman is a fantastic opportunity because I don't have the access to learn about those things until my junior year. And I just want to thank Dr. K for creating this incredible organization. So before we begin, we are going to do a little icebreaker. So in the chat, or you can come off of mute, I want you all to answer one of the following questions. How are you feeling today? 2, what was the highlight of your week? 3, how would you define mental health? And 4, does your school/institution offer mental health resources? So I'm going to go first. So I'm going to answer number 1 and 2 because they kind of tie in together. So the highlight of my week was I just started spring break and I passed one of my midterms. Well, I passed all of my midterms, but I passed my midterms and I'm feeling pretty good today. So if you want to come off of me, you can come off of me right now, or you can put it in the chat to answer any one of the following questions.
I can go. So I'm actually a teacher in Baltimore City. I work at Pimlico Elementary Middle School, and I how I'm feeling today. If y'all don't know, being a teacher is extremely hard. So I'm feeling okay today because it wasn't a wild and crazy day, but usually I'm feeling quite all over the place.
That's understandable. So I'm reading the chat. So I'm so sorry if I pronounced your name wrong, but Gina says, I apologize. Oh, she said that she's doing okay today and appreciate being here with you. Thank you. And oh, you go to City too, period. So I love that. And yeah, City does provide mental health resources now. Yes. Okay, if nobody else wants to go, we're gonna continue. Oh, somebody else went. And Camille said, "Hey, Camille." She said she's doing great and a little tired. Okay, so we're gonna continue. So I do want to give a trigger warning. So some of the things that I'll talk about in today's presentation might be a little triggering. If at any time you feel triggered, you can turn your camera off or you can just come back when you're ready. Okay, so we're going to talk about mental health. So what is mental health? Mental health includes our emotional, psychological, and social well-being. It affects how we think, feel, and act. It also helps determine how we handle stress and relate to others and make healthy choices. So in the chat, can you name 1 or 2 mental health disorders within teenagers or children or young adults? Okay, so anxiety, that is very true. Depression, yes. conduct disorder, ODD, bipolar, bipolar disorder. Good. PTSD. Okay. Good. So all of those things are correct. However, today we will discuss the following mental health disorders: anxiety, behavior disorders, and depression. These are the most common mental health disorders in children, and there are several others like you named, like phobias, PTSD, panic disorders, bipolar disorder, etc. So we're going to talk about mental health and stigma before we like dig deep into all of the disorders that I just named. So I am going to read a quote from Bill Clinton. It says, "Mental illness is nothing to be ashamed of, but stigma and bias shames us all." So a mental health stigma is a social disapproval when society places shame on people who live with a mental illness or seek help for emotional distress, such as anxiety, depression, bipolar disorder, or PTSD. And the lack of awareness and education for perception and the fear of people with mental illness can lead to increased stigma. At a young age, Black people are taught to keep their feelings under control, and the stigma surrounding African American teenagers not being able to properly cope with their mental health issues due to essential resources provided to them, and us having a limited amount of resources available within our communities in the first place. For example, parents sometimes don't accept the fact that their children have mental health disorders because they are too young. And I can count on both my hands how many times my parents told me that, and we really had to have a conversation about I had to say, "Mommy, Daddy, I'm really going through some stuff. I'm depressed, I'm having anxiety and all of that." And we really had to dig down and talk about it. But compared to the primarily white neighborhoods that have easily accessible programs and therapists, it is a leading factor in why our people grow up to be emotionally numb, distant, and desensitized. So I do want to say that mental health is not a journey that we must take alone, and being given access to therapy and healthy resources and support can break these stigmas for our generations and any further generations, rather than allowing mental health to go underdiagnosed and or ignored. So, how many of you heard of trauma informed care? You can raise your hand. You can raise your hand if you have, or give me a thumbs up or thumbs down if you haven't. Oops. Okay, good. Okay, Okay, we got a couple thumbs up. Okay, so if you haven't heard of trauma informed care focuses mainly on the individual's harm and a highly specific needs of the individual and engage in the treatment of individual trauma, which is very, very important in the school system. So, for example, this is hypothetically speaking. So, a student named Kevin, he has many different mental health disorders. So teachers have to work with guidance counselors and social workers in school to help him maintain his mental health disorders. So like if he has ADHD, he has to work with them to get his medication if he doesn't take it while he's home, and et cetera, et cetera. So also they have involved in the treatment of symptoms of trauma. It can be anxiety, fear, anger, sadness, distraught, and hopelessness. And I also want you to keep in mind that trauma informed care focuses on the individual trauma instead of the collective. We're going to talk about the collective trauma in a few minutes. So yeah. Okay. So you can have trauma informed care without your average childhood experiences. So average childhood experiences is also known as ACEs. There are three different types. You have abuse, neglect, and household dysfunction. And initially, adverse childhood experiences was a study focused on how traumatic childhood events may negatively affect adult health. And there were about 17,000 participants involved in this study. And the questions consisted of asking about childhood mistreatment, family dysfunction, and current health statuses and behavior. And according to Center for Children Counseling, the United States has about 61% Black children who have experienced one of the many ACEs. And the formal definition is potentially traumatic events that occur in our childhood. So I just said a mouthful. So I'm going to break it down for you. So there are two different types well, there's two different categories of ACEs. So you have your conventional ACEs and your expanded ACEs. So your conventional ACEs are your physical, emotional, sexual abuse, physical, emotional neglect, and then you have your household dysfunction, which is divorce, substance abuse, caregiver treated violently, incarcerated relative, and mental illnesses. So all your conventional ACEs expand to your expanded ACEs, so such as bullying, neighborhood safety, racism, living in foster care, etc. Here's another example that can help you understand more, because this helped me when I first learned about ACEs, because I was very, 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 very confused. So you have a tree. So you know you can't have a plant or any type of plant without your roots. So you have your roots. So those are your adverse community environments. So you want to have your adverse community environments are poverty, discrimination, poor housing, quality, affordability, violence, etc. And all of those things roots up to your tree. And then all those things end up to physical and emotional neglect, mental illnesses, incarceration, homelessness, maternal depression, etc. Now we're going to talk about behavior disorders. So we're going to talk about the three common ones. We have deficit hyperactivity disorder, which is ADHD, conduct disorder, oppositional defiant disorder, also known as ODD. So first we're going to talk about ODD. So ODD is a disorder in a child marked by defiant and disobedient behavior to authority figures. So symptoms can starting from the ages 8 years old. Somebody can be angry and irritable mood, and a child can be argumentative and have a defiant behavior. Then you have conduct disorder, a conduct disorder in a child that results in them showing um and conduct disorder, they can have aggressive behavior toward others and animals, frequent physical altercation with others, use of a weapon to harm others, and deliberately physically cruel to other people, and it can be animals as well. And they have involvement into confrontational economic order crimes, so that can be mugging or robbing, and also they don't follow rules. So as you can see right here, you can tell the difference. So you see a mom telling her son to stop it, and you can tell that he's sticking his tongue out and being defiant. And then you have I believe their brother and sister, and he's looked very, very irritated, and I'm pretty sure he probably got in a really bad argument, because that's what siblings do. We argue all the time, because I know me and my siblings, we argue all the time. My little brother act just like this. So yeah. Okay, now we're going to talk about ADHD. So ADHD is a chronic condition including attention difficulty, hyperactivity, and impulsiveness. So there are a few symptoms of ADHD. A child with ADHD can have difficulty paying attention to details, difficulty finishing their schoolwork, being disorganized, can be easily distracted, or appearing to not listen when spoken to. So you can put your answer in the chat. Can you think of a time when you were in school at a young age and you heard someone say, oh, he or she must have ADHD? Or you can raise your hand. Mm-hmm. Okay, Zion said yes. Okay, I see a couple of people raising their hands. Mm-hmm. Yes. So that I've heard it multiple times. I think I didn't stop hearing it until I was in high school. I was like maybe the 11th grade, and they were still saying, oh, you have ADHD. I'm like, guys, we're grown now, grow up. But I know sometimes in school, if another child see a student moving around a lot or acting a certain way, the first thought that mostly comes to mind is, oh, he must have ADHD. Why do you keep jumping up and down? Why are you not sitting down? You need to stop. Like, you act like you have an ADHD. And it was just, and sometimes the child don't have ADHD, and it's just like it can be considered bullying, and it can lead to several things. And I remember when I did camp counseling and stuff. I was a camp counselor like up until I was a junior, because COVID happened, so they really didn't have in person camps and stuff. And I worked with a young man who had ADHD, and they were always bullying him, and it wasn't sitting right with me. So that's why I wanted to learn more about ADHD. So yeah. Okay, so I have another question. Do you believe that Black boys are overdiagnosed with ADHD? You can raise your hand too if you can raise your hand. Yes. Yes. Okay. So yes and no. Um, Black males are most likely to be diagnosed with conduct disorder and ODD as well. Um, Hyperactivity and intensiveness ADHD are symptoms of ADHD. We're going to talk about that in a minute. And family conflict, poor nutrition, inadequate sleep, exposure to drugs, and substance abuse can all lead to symptoms of ADHD, especially in Black males. And this all relates back to Black children are more often survivors of community violence, racism, and all kinds of different ACEs. Okay, now we're going to talk about hyperactivity versus inattention ADHD. So, hyperactivity is a state of being unusually or abnormally active. So, there are the symptoms of hyperactivity is difficulty sitting still, constantly fidgeting with their hands, often feel restless, difficulty waiting their turn, and very, very talkative. As you can see right here in this picture, the young boy, he's very restless and stuff, and being he's very hyper. Whereas in this picture, you see the young lady right here, and she's very calm, and that's an example of inattention ADHD. So that is the lack of attention or abnormally active. So the symptoms of inattention ADHD are struggles to pay attention, difficulty following through on a task, and difficulty following through on their responsibilities and make careless mistakes and very disorganized and often loses things. Now we're going to talk about anxiety. So, how many of you were nervous before an exam, an athletic event, quiz, or even walking in the cafeteria during lunchtime? I know I was. I mean, I'm still nervous. Like I said, I go to Spelman, and sometimes walking out my dorm, I just be nervous and just walking around because I feel like people just looking at me, but they're not, or even going to the caf and I'm scared I'm gonna drop something all the time, especially taking the test. I was even nervous today to present to you all. So yeah, on the first, Zion said on the first day of school, I almost threw up because I was around so many people. Oh, I don't even want to talk about the first day of school for me. I was so scared. I was so scared walking because it's not just you're not with just with your age group. We were adults. Like in college, you're with adults now. So I'm just like, oh, okay. So especially Spelman is all the way in Atlanta. So that was definitely a huge adjustment. First week of school, he was nervous. Yeah. Okay. So anxiety might cause you to sweat. It might cause you to feel restless, intense, and have a rapid heartbeat. It can be a normal reaction to stress. For example, you might feel anxious when you face with a difficult problem at work, before taking a test, or before making an important decision. Ooh, this is talking about me. Oh Lord. And genetics can also cause a person to experience anxiety. So there are a few symptoms of anxiety. So anxiety can last for a long period of time. It can be psychological and physical and behavioral. It can also, individuals can also experience excessive fear or worry, and chest pains and a pounding heart and rapid heartbeat are all characteristics of a panic attack. Now, now we're gonna talk about anxiety. We're gonna talk about its cousin, depression. So depression is a combination of biological, psychological, and social sources of distress, just like anxiety. And there are many signs and symptoms of depression. And in order for one to be diagnosed with depression, the symptoms must be present for at least 2 weeks. So depression can affect the individual's ability to carry out their work and daily activities, and affects personal relationships, an unusual sad mood. An individual can have a loss of enjoyment and interest in activities, and lack of energy, and changes in eating habits as well, and feeling worthless or guilty. So yeah. And I have experienced all of these things multiple times, dealing with my depression. So yeah, all of these things are true. Now we're gonna watch a video about suicide. So if at any time you are feeling triggered, feel free to take a break. Um, so yeah, this video is gonna talk about a little bit about suicide and give you a little bit of facts about Black children and how it relates to suicide. So I'm gonna play the video.
The suicide rate for Black youth in America is almost double what it was in the early 90s. At least 48 Black children between the ages of 6 and 14 took their own lives in 2016. Historically, the reported suicide rate of Black Americans has trailed behind the rate of white Americans. But now, things have changed.
How Black kids express their symptoms is different than what we standardly see as, sort of emblematic of depression.
Dr. Michael Lindsay is a professor at NYU's Silver School of Social Work. His work helps explain why Black children are now killing themselves at higher rates than their white counterparts.
The way that Black kids express their symptoms is more relational, how they are getting along with their peers, with family members. Black kids also tend to express their symptoms in hostile, volatile ways, so through anger and explosive behaviors.
And it's not just bullying. Poverty and other stressors can impact how Black children process feelings. And 34% of Black children under 18 live below the poverty line.
Health disorders and poverty are inextricably linked. So if you're living in a poverty-impacted situation, you're likely to have the resultant mental health issues that relate to stressors and strains of living in poverty.
So how do we stop this? Schools are in a great position to help, but they're greatly underutilized. Systemic barriers can prevent them from being effective. Only 29 states require schools to provide some form of counseling service. And with constant budget cuts, counselors are often the first to go. In places like Philadelphia, where Black students...
Okay, so I hope you learned a few things about Black children and how it relates to suicide. So we're gonna go to the next slide. So these are the signs that a person is suicidal. So these are some things that you should look out for: seeking access to weapons or any other means to hurt themselves, talking or writing about death, feeling trapped, isolating themselves, or threatening to hurt themselves kill kill themselves. So this is suicide language. So you have suicide thoughts, suicide plan, and suicide attempts. So suicide thoughts are ideas about ending one's life. Suicide plan is someone who is frustrated that they create a plan to end their life, and suicide attempts is doing something intentionally to end their life. Okay, so this is the suicide hotline, 800-273-8255 for you or for anybody that you may know that are suicidal. And I also want to say you are loved. I love you even though I don't know you like that, but I love you and your purpose in life matters. Okay, now we're gonna talk about the best HBCU in the whole wide world. Like I said before, I go to Spelman. I'm a first year psychology major there, so talking about mental health is very, very important to me. So before I even talk about Spelman, I just want to talk about college students. So college students experience depression, anxiety a lot throughout their 4 years. So you have symptoms can be difficulty handling their schoolwork, loss of interest in activities such as clubs, sports, and or other social commitments, changes in eating or sleeping patterns, emotional outbursts such as tearfulness or anger or feeling overwhelmed, and having lack of energy. And all of these things are true because I have experienced it last semester a lot because a lot of people were dying and I discovered I had a health condition. And I was, like I said before, I'm from Baltimore. So being away from my family and going through all of these things were very, very stressful and very, very overwhelming for me. but thank God I do have my Spell House family. I think some of them are here today. So if they are, hey y'all, I love y'all so much. Some of my Spell House family, they just been very, very supportive. So yeah, and then not even just that, Spelman has a counseling center. So Spelman has, they allow us to have 6 free counseling sessions, which was very, 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 very intriguing to me. And I just like, oh wow. Because the other schools that I applied to and it got accepted and didn't have free counseling sessions. I knew that I was going to need therapy because I'm always stressed out, or I know that something's going to happen, even though I need to stop thinking that. So being able to have free counseling sessions even after the 6 sessions are up is just wonderful. As well as we have different mental health organizations in the AUC. I'm a part of one of them. One of them is called Chill. And I love my Chill family as well. I don't know if some of them are here. If you are here, I love you so much. And we basically just give mental health tips and mental health tips and just talk about it with everyone around the AUC, which consists of Spelman College, Morehouse College, and Clark Atlanta University. Okay, so we're gonna talk about mental health in Baltimore City school systems. Like I said, I did attend the best high school in Baltimore City, the #1 high school in Maryland, by the way, Baltimore City College. So, Baltimore City has different programs that they implement in all of their schools. However, I just feel like a lot of them were not executed in the schools, you know. I feel like they should have, well, I feel like there should be more resources for us, because there were times when I was in at City where we didn't have any resources from administration as well. I do want to talk about my personal experience a little bit. So in 2020, I experienced kind of a really dark time in my life. Junior year was kicking my butt. People were dying left and right. And I was healing the grief for loss of my grandmother. And I was also sexually assaulted. And so during that time, I did try to commit suicide, and twice. And due to all of those emotions and trauma I was facing, and with similar students were going through the same thing that I was going through, and when we brought it to the administration's attention, it was little to no solutions or no resolutions resolved. So I think that we do need to have more counseling and more people in our school system to help us with all of those things. Whew, I said a lot, but I'm gonna just take time to process it. So now we're going to talk about healing-centered engagement. So healing-centered engagement is a strength-based approach that helps us view trauma in different ways. So this is the opposite of trauma-informed care. So trauma-informed care just focuses on individual, and healing-centered engagement focuses on the collective, so your community and everybody else. So that ties into Ubuntu, and which is the cultural philosophy of African tribes that can sum up as I am what I am because of who we are. So basically saying your trauma is my trauma. And yeah. Okay, so I am going to embarrass myself a little bit. So here are just a few photos from the Baltimore City riots in 2015 when Freddie Gray was brutally murdered by Baltimore City Police Department. Many people around the city came together to express their feelings about the tragic loss of Freddie Gray. I don't know about y'all, but I was 11 years old, 10 or 11 years old, watching constant replays of Freddie Gray dying. And being put in the police car, which is very traumatizing, and seeing all of the buildings being rioted, because I did live down the street from many of the buildings that were burnt down. And my grandmother lived near the CVS that got burnt down, as well as my uncle. So just seeing it is just like, wow. Kids did take time to create hashtags to real Baltimore, because Baltimore is not just a place of trauma. It's not just a place of distraught and violence. We have so many amazing things here, and I just wish that other people would see it, because I can count on my hand how many times people like, oh, y'all would be shooting people up, da 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 da. But that's not just Baltimore. Like, we have so much talent. We have so many amazing organizations just like this one, like Haya, Heart Smiles, after school programs like the Carmel Anthony Development Center. That's my baby. I love that center. Under the living classrooms, we just have so many different things. And here's a picture of me when I was in 6th grade with my best friends and my little brother, and we all wrote a song about how Baltimore is all of those things. And we were on the news, we went to New York and everything, and it was just an amazing time. So now that I talked about what I did and how we can help our community, so I did list 3 things. So providing coping strategies in schools, plan events for Suicide Prevention Week in schools, and create mental health awareness campaigns and seminars as well. So one or two people can come off from mute and say what do they think we should implement in schools. It could be elementary schools, middle schools, high schools, or even college, because everybody goes through mental health. So yeah, so we can have 1 or 2 people come off and mute, or just 1, it doesn't matter.
For me, I think that what schools can do, if they see like people struggling or like starting to lack as the school year go on, like say, hey, I'm not sure what's going on at home, or I'm not sure what's going on, period. But I think you should check out the mental counseling office or something like that, because I feel like even though it's not really the teacher job, I just feel like if they see students lacking, they shouldn't just let it go by as time going on. And I'm just saying this because I'm struggling with it now. But at least like refer them or encourage them to do better instead of just letting them sit there and fail, if that makes sense.
I agree, because I experienced that a lot when I was in high school, when a lot of us were failing classes and they just like, oh, here you go, you get an F. But I'm glad in college is definitely different. I can say that Spelman really cares about their students, because even when I take little mental health day, they will email me like, hey Chelsey, why were you in class today? Are you feeling okay? And I would tell them, and they are very, very understanding. So I agree with you, Zion. So in the interest of time, I'm going to do Q&A because we're almost running out of time. So if you have any questions, feel free to come off of mute right now. If not, thank you so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Here's the Healing Youth Alliance email and our Instagram. So all of it is the same, healingyouthAlliance@gmail.com, and Instagram is Healing Youth Alliance. So after we get done here, you all can go back to the YouTube live and make sure you complete the survey that Miss Candace put in the chat. Like I said, I really do appreciate everyone that came today. Oh, I see all my Spellhouse family. Oh my gosh, y'all making me, oh my God, I'm gonna cry. Oh my gosh. But thank you guys so much for coming. I really appreciate it. Love y'all so much. I hope you enjoyed this presentation. If you need the link to the YouTube live, just go to Heart Smiles. That's what it's, Heart Smiles TV, and you will see it. So yeah, thanks guys for coming.